I will use these glasses to explain the child development. Very important for the parents that have a child with cerebral palsy. Even more important if your child is walking but have difficulties with that. So when the child is born, it have a pretty primitive structure. And I made some drawings. Very simple body. The child is not even able to hold the head. The chest become wider. The child is starting to sit. The child is developing further. More developed torso. Is starting to do other stuff, like crawling. Torso developed further, still sitting, but with a completely different spine. So you see, all that together allow the child to go further. The further we go, the more developed is the body. The child is starting to do some new things, like walking and doing other activities. You have a fundamentals. With a healthy child, it goes straight forward. But with the child with disability, like for example cerebral palsy, if the child is walking, it will walk in a not such a good way. Therapy will focus on that problem. But there is a problem with that strategy, because things are not so simple. When the child is born, it have a pretty primitive structure. If the child have genetical disorders, or for example cerebral palsy, it could have a problem with structure as well. It could be that the chest is very weak, that the child is very soft, that the joints are very unstable. So it looks like everything is okay, but in reality it is different. So then the child is growing and starting to do some other things. Some kids goes faster with developmental stages, some slower, but when they finally are able to sit, the sitting doesn't look so right, but they are able to do it, and their structure also is not responding in the same way. Then later the child is further doing some other things, sitting in different ways, and still basically the structure is not really developed as it should. And on the end, when the child come to walking with all these structural problems which are influencing one another, that walking really look really bad, and it's very, very difficult to make it very stable and sustainable, because as small things that can happen in the child life can easily just collapse everything. And this is the reason why parents very often say, my child was walking better when it was 7 or 8 years old, but now when it's 13 or 14, I can see problems with walking. I'm the co-founder of BDA Therapy. We basically focus on fundamentals, because when you focus, for example, on the breathing, it will improve the chest. The chest will become better developed and stronger. It will influence the spine as well. And then that spine will influence better position of the pelvis in the walking, in the sitting. And then that will also influence in a very positive way the child crawling. And then that crawling will be very important developmental source for the development further of the spine, legs, hips. And on the end, you start to get the changes which are more stable, more energy efficient, pain-free, and what is the most important, changes which will allow the child to develop further. And now I will show this in practice by explaining how changes at the fundamental level are slowly changing something which is quite advanced function, like for example walking. I am holding this young boy at the level of his knees, and by doing that I am exposing his instability of the pelvis. Obviously his pelvis is side bending to the side, while he's using the upper part of the body to stabilize himself. He is able to walk, but in a very difficult way. With every step he's struggling with pelvis instability. Pelvis is constantly side bending. If the spine didn't develop properly, it will create a huge problem for the child to stabilize the pelvis. And if the pelvis is not stable, the child will have a difficulties with weight transferring from one leg to another leg, and with counterbalancing as well. So, if the spine development is missing, then you have collapse. So fundamentals are very important. This include the chest, this include the spine, this include the pelvis, this include weight distribution. So when you properly address the fundamental weaknesses, then the legs, even if they are not so good, for the child still it becomes much more easier to move, walk, and to have much better energy efficiency. The whole walking then become much more stable. So direct approach which mean directly exercising just the walking, it have limitations, because if the fundamentals are weak, then on the end things collapse.